Hello and welcome to this edition of Diaspora Central Spotlight. I am Gil Ingles, and with me today in the studio, ladies and gentlemen, she is one of those individuals that knows how to take words, put them on paper, and then turn those words from paper into images that can actually be on stage and reflect what life has been like for those individuals. Playwright, award nominated, award-winning, and we in projections that this one should also be another award-winning work of hers. Miss Angelica Cheri, welcome to Diaspora Central.
Oh my goodness, I received all of that. Yes, awards, yes, nominations.
Thank you.
I received, and for this piece,
Amen.
Yes, sir, amen.
Indeed,
Thank you for
indeed.
that.
Phenomenal woman.
Phenomenal woman.
Yes. That's a big title.
It's a big title.
Right.
It's a big show.
Big
and
show.
This is a big woman that the show is about. It is.
Now, this is one of those productions that, in my opinion, it tends to bring about, how can I say, a lot of, I don't want to say anxiety, but a lot of butterflies, if there is, right? Right,
Really?
because yeah, it's one of those productions that brings a lot of butterflies to individuals, because, I mean, you are talking about someone who has actually become a part of the fabric of America's artistic cloth.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's not just anyone. It's Maya Angelou.
Maya Angelou. Yes. It's a tall order.
Big.
Huge. And it's so interesting because I know that, and I've known that obviously from the beginning, but I could not allow myself to go there in my mind because then I wouldn't be able to write a thing.
Right.
I had to personalize Maya Angelou in order to be able to write this story. Because we think about 86 years of just compelling, inspiring, terrifying, beautiful, overcoming, the breadth of material about her life.
Yeah.
I think everybody has an access point in which they think about Maya Angelou. It's,
Indeed.
oh, Caged Bird, Still I Rise,
Right.
Phenomenal Woman,
Yep.
Pulse of the Morning. But very few people have the full picture
Indeed.
of who she is. And I will say even this play nothing can give you the full picture in one sitting. But this just attempts to give you a digestible, compressed version of the full picture.
Right.
But in order to be able to even approach that, I had to get out of my head about the massiveness of who she is, what you said originally,
Right.
and just bring myself and find an access point for myself to think at one point, because Maya Angelou, her massive work did not come about until she was 40.
Right.
So there was a time in her life where she was my age. She was broke. She was trying to raise a son. She was trying to figure out what to write.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, all right, let me start there. Let me start in the journey. And then that way I can really dig, because that's where everyone is going to find themselves.
Right. Indeed.
We're all somewhere in our journey.
Indeed.
And that's where she can be of massive help to us.
Indeed, definitely. Not only somewhere, we always someone in our own journey also. That's
right.
Right? And this show is really about journeys.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about yours.
Oh my goodness.
Right? And we want to
Okay.
start really
Okay,
way back, right?
Oh
You
my
don't have to
goodness.
reflect your age, but
Okay.
it's
It's like, oh, a lady should never.
disclosure,
Right,
right? Disclosure, just in case.
I
Right?
have no shame
Yeah,
in my age,
but
but okay.
let's start with where were you born, and where were you raised?
Absolutely. I am a born and raised Los Angeles baby.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
California.
Cali. And it's interesting being here in Texas, though, because I do have, my family has roots in Texas.
Yeah.
My grandmother migrated here from Marlin, Texas. Well, she migrated to California in the 40s from Marlin, Texas. So that's still in my fabric. But I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
Yes.
So Los Angeles come from a big family?
Actually small.
Okay.
My family at large is massive.
Okay.
But my immediate family is small because it's just myself and my father. My mother passed away when I was a baby from breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
And so I was raised by my father and his mother, my grandmother from Texas.
Okay.
So, yes.
So grandma is really mom in a way,
She was
right?
mom, yes.
Yeah.
She passed away when I was 9. And that's another access point between myself and Maya because she was raised by her fraternal grandmother as well, Annie Henderson.
Right.
And so Dora Lee Clark is my Annie Henderson, who instilled a lot in me. And I believe the fabric and the DNA of the woman who I have become is from what she instilled in me from a very young age.
From a very young, up to 9.
Up to 9.
Up to 9 years old,
9.
yeah.
Right.
And that normally shows a lot of character, right?
Absolutely.
Because the important things did come across.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, so you gave us grandma's name, but what was the biological mother's name also?
That was Nicola.
Yeah. And what about the father?
That's David.
David.
Yes. Yes.
Now,
my shining stars.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Now is you go by Angelica Cheri.
Cheri, yes.
Cheri.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, I gotta get the right pronunciation
right.
here.
Yes.
Almost like French, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, Cheri. Yeah,
yes.
Cheri.
Exactly.
Okay. Now you speak a little bit of French also?
No, but Spanish fluently.
Yes. Okay, Spanish fluently.
Sí.
Okay, so todo bien.
Sí, todo bien.
Todo bien.
Soy de Los Ángeles. Claro. Sí.
Exactly, and
Sí.
Texas is not that different either.
That's true.
Right, there's plenty of Spanish around here.
That's true. I've seen.
Yeah. Now, normally pressure, trauma, tends to create the stars, the diamonds, the ones that actually shine.
Yes.
And just in these very few minutes, you have already described a life that started with requirements to change and of being under specific pressures that is not normal for everyone else.
This is true.
But he gave you a character and gave you a level of ambition beyond also what is not normal.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So at what point in that young age do you really start to realize that, okay, these things are really not to define me, but actually to exalt me into the next level?
I love that question. I think because it's different. It would have been different, like, for example, if I was a teenager and lost my mother, right? But as a small child, I was 11 months old when she passed away. So it really has been my life norm.
Right.
So there was never a point where I decided, oh, this thing has happened to me. It's just like, this is a condition. It's a given circumstance. But because I never knew anything beyond that, like I never knew what life was like with her, so I just came to receive and accept this is my life and this is a difference. There were a lot of struggles within that, but I knew that that's what developed the storyteller in me. My father always says that the first instance of me becoming a storyteller to him was, for many years, like between, I want to say like the ages of like 2 and 8.
Right.
My father and I were long distance from each other. He was in Los Angeles and I was in Bakersfield where my grandmother lived.
Okay.
And so he would come down every other weekend and we would hang out and he would, spend the weekend with us.
Right.
But and I would spend summers there and different things like that. But in between then, we would talk on the phone.
Okay.
And we had this game that we played because my father is also a vocalist. He sings and he does all these different things.
Okay.
And so we played this game with Yogi Bear. And he would do the voices of Yogi and Boo Boo and then Cindy. And then we started making up characters, and I would tell him, okay, say this. Okay, do that. Okay, now this is happening. And he was just like, well, that's where it started.
Right.
And I was probably like 4. Yeah. And it evolved from there.
Yeah. So at that point, you're basically developing that staging process,
exactly.
Right? Because you placing these characters in a specific stage, in specific positions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's
funny.
But it is that pressure that I talk about that makes diamonds, because and understanding, and I know that your dad had to be also a very strong man to be able to maintain a family, right? Still,
right.
And your grandmother, I believe, that was someone of very strong character.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She was one of the grand old gals, as he says.
Yeah.
You don't really make them like that
No, I kind of think that they still do, because you got a little bit of that, so eventually you too will become that to somebody else.
Thank you. You know what I mean by that is of that time.
Indeed.
Because of that period of time,
right.
You know, and you're that close to enslavement,
right.
And you've got your grandmama was enslaved, and just it's a different color.
Right.
But I received that.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And you probably got some of those stories from, directly from the vine.
The source. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that also helps with the character.
All the way.
You learn to respect the opportunities and the things that you're given.
That's right.
Yeah. What about schooling?
Oh my goodness, lots of schooling.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote my first play in high school.
Okay.
Went to Westchester High School, represent, comments.
There you go. Westchester.
Westchester, in Los Angeles. So that was the first play that I wrote was in 9th grade, and that was like a 1-act. I had been an actress in middle school.
Okay.
Doing these Shakespeare competitions, one of those drama geeks, you know, in a way, which was amazing.
Right.
And I'm still friends with my classmates that we were doing those competitions together this day. We're still friends. But that's where the acting, that's where theater started. And then the writing portion was a 9th grade assignment in my English class. Alan Sachs, represent, Janet Landon. You have to give flowers to your elementary, middle school, high school teachers and instill that in you.
Indeed.
And so so I wrote that 1-act in 9th grade, and then by 11th grade, I wrote a full length and directed, produced, and we had a full cast in my high school.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this is exactly what I want to do with my life. Great, period.
That was
I know
it.
what to do at 16. And so in undergrad, I went to UCLA, and I majored in theater with a playwriting concentration. Yeah. And so then after that, now this is where God is hilarious, right? So the sense of humor and the ambush, oh God. Because I went after UCLA, I moved to New York. So I lived in New York City for 6 years.
Okay.
And I did my first master's at Columbia University in New York City in playwriting. That was straightforward playwriting. Right. But I say ambush because while I was still at Columbia, I took a crash course for lyric writing that all of the MFA playwriting students had to take. Okay. And one of the instructors there was also an instructor at NYU. And she sort of pulled me aside and scouted me out of the NYU program and said, out of the Columbia program, and she said, you have a natural talent for lyrics and lyric writing. If you're interested, when you're finished with this master's at Columbia, come to NYU and you could get a second master's specifically in musical theater writing. And there's a fellowship for women of color to go tuition free. Right. And that was basically just like, hello. Yeah. Yeah. Your next chapter. Never would have expected that. Right. But it all worked together.
Yeah. Well, you showed up for yourself.
I did
right?
show up.
You showed up for yourself because you showing up at Columbia automatically opened up the rest of the gates.
Step by step.
Indeed.
Ordered steps.
Yeah. Right. So we're not only looking at someone that is writing plays, we're looking at someone that is actually even writing the music.
Well, the lyrics.
The
I
lyrics,
not started
right?
composing
Right,
music
no,
yet,
not composing,
but
right? But doing the
getting there.
lyrics, yeah, doing the
there.
lyrics,
That's
and
right.
and I mean with the lyrics, a lot of times also comes the melody, right?
Absolutely.
You may not play it, but you have an idea of what the melody is like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Musicianship is,
Indeed.
key.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot of talent.
Bless you.
Let's go
Thank you.
let's go into our first break and take a look at some of the great content that Angelica Cheri.
Yes.
Angelica Cheri has actually created. So we'll be right back. For those of you that just tuned in, you now listening to Diaspora Central Spotlight with Gil Ingles. We'll be back.
So they fall back with gun and powder, town to town, took their fill and left laughing louder than they ever laughed before. Oh, 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 ain't it funny how the tables turned around? Looked like they finally got to claim some common ground, and they wanted more, we could run through the golden grass, climb up on a mountain made of solid brass, reach into the cloud, grab a diamond, breaking through, and bring it back to you. Mama, you know in your heart it's too right to be wrong, 'cause it's been inside us all along.
And we are back. If you just joined us, you're now tuned into Diaspora Central Spotlight with Gil Ingles, and our guest today is Angelica Cheri. Yes, we're talking about one of the most creative individuals that I've ever met in my life. Listen, I'm honestly honored
goodness.
right now. No, seriously,
Oh my
I am
goodness.
honored, and let me tell you why. Because to me, just the fact that you have two masters. Let me actually go back. The fact that by age 16 you already knew what you wanted to do,
I did.
right?
Yes.
And then you go and you do two masters in which one complements the other, or they complement each other,
do.
and they all go with the vision that you actually created at 16 years old of who you were.
I never looked at it that way, but that's
Yeah.
right. I like that a lot.
That's not a normal thing.
It's not
No, that's signs. No, it's signs of genius.
I appreciate
Right,
that.
that's signs of genius. That's success in itself.
I do
right,
receive that.
and
Thank you.
and I know that no journey comes without challenges.
Absolutely.
Right, there are always plenty of those.
Yes.
But it takes a little bit of a fighter spirit, right?
To be.
And having a grandmother like yours, I'm sure that you learned
Oh
a
my
portion of
goodness.
that fighter spirit.
That's right.
Yeah.
No quitting. Quitting is not in the blood.
No,
Not in the blood.
yeah, I at times say that quitting is not part of the vocabulary for immigrants.
Oh, there we
Right.
go.
And
There we go.
when we talking to immigrants, I tend to say that it's one joke that we created, right? And I always say that, and they're like, okay,
It's
right?
the truth.
Yeah, but you now in New York City, you're now actually at the haven of what America considers to be the world of theater,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
Plenty of actors out there. I remember, I think when I arrived in America, the first actor that I saw at a play was actually the guy that played one of the teachers on the show Fame.
Oh wow.
The main character, the guy that played the black guy that played
Yes,
the
yes.
teacher, the professor,
Oh, no
one of the
way.
professors, right? And I come across this guy, and we like, he's coming out of a theater, and I'm walking across the theater, and I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere,
Wow.
right?
Yes, yes.
Right.
That's New
So,
York for you.
Yeah, so I kind of stopped the guy and I took a picture. And I gotta find that picture because there was still the days of Kodak cameras that you had
That's
to
right.
take, go develop them,
That's right.
but I do have the physical picture with them, and to me that was like a major highlight because I mean it is New York City.
Yes.
That's what the world knows as being America.
That's right.
Being from LA, did you feel much of a difference on getting to New York?
Massive difference. Culturally, it's a very different city. For one, I didn't know that I had an accent until I moved to New York City.
Most of us don't until we
Leave,
Yeah.
right? Because you there, I'm talking. I'm not talking to you. I'm gonna call you later. I was like, oh my God, I don't sound like these people. Like, I guess people would think, like, are you Southern? I'm like, no, I'm from Los Angeles, honey. I was like, okay, so I sound different from all these people. That's one.
Right.
And then the climate was a massive shock.
Yeah.
I don't do snow. That's not in my blood. I mean, let's talk about diaspora.
Yeah.
I'm African.
You and I both. You and I both. 35 years in D.C. You cannot convince me to take snow. No way.
No, sir. No, thank you.
Been there, done that. Don't.
It's not
part of
necessary.
No.
Not for life. No, I'm not here for it. Like, no, thank you. You can have it back. Take it back.
There you go.
That, the weather was extreme. But being on foot, that was one of my favorite things about being in the city, because New York City was developed before the invention of the car.
Indeed.
So you didn't, they built the city to not need that.
You walked.
You walk everywhere, and I loved to the first couple years I lived there, I would just go and just walk for miles and blocks and just looking at everything, popping into little things and random restaurants and oil shops and fragrances, and just really because there is, like you said, it's such a melting pot, and it's such a meeting of the world.
Indeed.
At large.
It is.
So that was really exciting. And the funniest thing that I lived in New York for 6 years. And I think the funniest thing about my experience there is that many of my closest friends that I made in New York were all from California.
Oh, wow.
We didn't know each other prior. Like, one of my best friends in the world, we became roommates. Now she lives like in the same building as I do in Los Angeles. Yeah. But we were from California. Didn't know each other until we moved to New York. It's just funny how that happens.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's sometimes, regardless of where you go, then you kind of come across your tribe.
That's right.
Before and tribesmen tribes per people start to
yes, they form. Yes.
to create their own spaces and all.
Exactly.
Now, the first time you probably showcased one of your bodies of work, which was 9th grade, you said?
Yes.
Right? At the end of that showcase, you probably felt something.
I definitely did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Take us through that process.
Well, so in 9th grade, it was just a reading with these professional actors, and I think I was like, oh, that was really interesting to hear it out loud, but it was still a reading. Yeah. And then in the 11th grade, it was an actualized performance of a different piece, and then I thought, and because I was so involved with all of the aspects, like making the playbill, setting up the casting notice, conducting all the rehearsals, but to just have a body of work, something living on the stage that people are a part of and that people experienced, and I could to present it in this assembly in front of the student body and hear the reaction, and it was just like, wow, I held nothing back. I held nothing back from this. Like, I spent Christmas break writing the play. Yeah. Like, it was just like, there's no purer form of me that I can translate and share. Right. And the amount of fulfillment that just brought was actualizing. Yeah. And affirming. And it became, because I don't think I internalized in my head before that being a playwright was a dream that I could have. It wasn't that I was like, oh, I can't do this. It just wasn't an idea in my mind. For many years, as a child, I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist.
Wow.
I had no idea. I mean, because, I knew about people like Zora Neale Hurston. Right. I knew about Maya Angelou. But when I read Fences in the 9th grade, that same English teacher, Alan Sachs, gave me a copy of Fences, and I thought,
Wow.
this sounds like my grandmother talking to people. I'm reading it, and then 7 Guitars. After I read Fences, I read 7 Guitars, and I was just like, this is just black folks talking to people, like
Right.
the way we sit around and like
Right.
this doesn't have to be. I mean, I learned Shakespeare first,
Indeed.
but that felt so like inaccessible and archaic and grand and just immortal in a way. But I never thought that black people were playwright. It wasn't a thought in my mind.
Right.
And this, of course, was a while ago.
Indeed.
But so just the idea, like, I can be a playwright. This can be my life. I can write and create worlds and share that with people. And hopefully people would, because that was the thing, what people received from it, from the play, afterwards, talking to audience members and saying, oh my God, I watched this play and it made me think of this, and I just lost this person, and and I had to have the same kind of conversation with my grandma. And it was like, oh, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about what you are depositing in people.
Indeed.
And allowing people to see and reflect for themselves.
Indeed.
Without feeling the same amount of pressure as their own life.
Right.
Like it's a play. Oh, but I see myself.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's it. That's why. That's what this is for.
And I mean, of course, it also shows the evolutionary and revolutionary spirit in you, because you're still discovering, even without the power of representation. You're still honing your talent in a specific thing, and eventually, once you realize that, oh wow, this is actually possible, then you're like, okay, I guess I'll be one of them.
Yes.
I'll be that girl.
That's right.
I'll be that lady.
That'll be
I'll be that woman.
That'll be my title. That's
Phenomenal woman.
Hey, all right now. Right.
Indeed. Yeah. So your teachers, school, right, prior even to high school, writing had to be somewhat a passion, maybe?
Honestly, I don't know that it registered that way. I definitely loved poetry, and I wrote poetry and spoken word.
Okay.
But it actually first, before writing, it was speaking. Like I would give speeches and in church, like as a 5 and 6 year old. But it was always vocal first before writing.
Yeah.
I think that's why acting for me came before writing.
Well, I mean, you were already getting your father on the phone.
That's right.
You were writing telephone plays.
Basically.
Right. That was your Instagram.
That was my TikTok.
Right.
Right.
You're creating those reels, right?
Exactly.
And the TikTok video.
That was a TikTok moment.
Right. Yeah. So eventually, as you moving on through classes, of course, in college, you get this lady that comes out to you and says, you know what, I see some sort of an innate talent within you that I think that we need to explore a bit more. A lot of people would even feel like, I don't know, I'm kind of scared, pressure. Like, I need to back down from this, kind of go away. In you, what is pushing you forward at that point in time?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had that moment for a second. I thought to myself, I've already spent, what was it? It would have already been 7 years in college, because it was 4 years at UCLA undergrad, 3 years at Columbia. I was like, do I need another master's? Do I even really want to write musicals? Because I did not like musicals growing up. Just to be honest, I did not like musical theater. There were maybe a couple that I resonated with. Like I loved the Disney musicals.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Okay.
And then I loved things like Sound of Music. But there were other, musicals in the Great American Songbook that I was just like, this is so white. The stories have nothing to do with me. Like I'm not invested.
It goes back again to that power of representation,
That's exactly it.
And eventually you become the person who was chosen.
That's right.
Because sometimes we show up, and then we end up being chosen to be the one to actually represent for the rest of a generation.
That's right.
You become the move maker, the shaker, the actual the pillar, the legacy of what art now is to the next generation.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And with that, you of course embrace one of the greatest pieces that represents America in its best, Phenomenal Woman.
Phenomenal woman. Maya Angelou.
Indeed.
I mean, the scriptures say, many are called, few are chosen.
Indeed.
That's the foundation of everything. If you ask about my courage, faith, it's my relationship with God. I know that in whom I have believed. Like, I honestly know that I really did not choose this myself. And I know that all these things were working together for me. I knew that God's purpose and plan for my life was specific.
Right.
And, you know, the tribulations and the different things that came in my life were, you know, what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for good.
Yeah.
But it even still just being chosen, when you think about the difference between being called and being chosen, I think it's about, are you going to say yes? Because you can be called to something and decide this is too big, or this doesn't make sense, or I like the comfort of what I have. I'd rather just do this.
Yeah.
And you lose out on the opportunity. Because I said yes to this NYU opportunity, I met one of the best friends that I could have ever imagined having, composer Ross Baum, who is my collaborator for life.
There you go.
I mean, he knows that there's no getting rid of me, and it's mutual. But we wrote a musical as a result of being in that program together, because the first 2 years it's a 2-year degree at NYU, the musical theater writing masters of fine arts. The first year is like composer and lyricist speed dating. You kind of meet all these you do different assignments with different composer and lyricists. And then in the second year, you pick a partner to write a full show with. And the show that we wrote is called Gun and Powder. And it's funny that we're in Houston because the show is set in Houston.
Oh, wow.
Going back to my grandmother and those stories that she would tell. So we have this big photo, you know, all the family photos going back generations and generations. And she would share with me these different photos. And then, of course, I'm looking at black people, different shades of black people. All of a sudden, 2 white women in the middle of a book. And it's just the first question, who are these women? These are cousins, they white. You know, but I found out they were not white. They were actually black. These were her aunts. Her that would mean that her grandfather's father was enslaved and married to, it was an enslaved woman named Molly who had a child who had a child with a Frenchman who gave birth to this ancestor. And then his children, he had about 8 children, and he had a set of twins, and Mary and Martha. And according to family legend, these women were outlaws.
Oh, wow.
Which is so funny. You think about Thelma and Louise.
Right.
This is the Wild Wild West version of
that.
That's
the beginning of, that's probably what Thelma and Louise got their inspiration from.
Probably so, right? But
that is gangster.
It was gangster. But the delicious thing about that story is that it didn't have a cohesive narrative. It's like one auntie tells it this way and another uncle tells it that way, blah, 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 you know. So Ross and I had a delicious source material that we could do whatever we wanted with.
There you go.
And so he wrote the music, I wrote the book and the lyrics, and that show has lived. It started off as our thesis at NYU, but then now it has had such a life. It started in 2014, so it's been 9 years basically in development, but we've had multiple workshops of the show. We won the Richard Rogers Award. We had NAMPed, all these different, collaborative and developmental opportunities. And then we had a production at the beginning of the pandemic that was sold out and uninterrupted by the pandemic. Thank God.
Nice.
And now it is gearing up for a massive production at Paper Mill in Jersey next spring.
Okay.
Hopefully, I'm just saying this. It has not been officially stated, but I'm just going to say, hopefully, Broadway transfer in fall of 2024.
There you go.
But all of that, if I had said no, just bringing it back to the original point,
Right.
if I had said no to the degree, then all these other things would not have happened.
Indeed.
So you have to give a yes.
Yeah. Evolutionaries are never comfortable.
Oh, my God.
Right. You always seeking that next move, the next step. And you definitely one of those. Let's go into another break and kind of check out some more of your content, because I know that the audience loves us talking, but they also want to see a bit of what you do. So we'll be right back.
This play is about these two women, Mary and Martha Clark, who against all odds decide to define their own destiny.
To be told that they were also outlaws, I thought that's what I want to write my musical about my own aunties.
When Angelica told me about this family legend, it felt like a life-changing moment for me. I've never had an idea hit me in the depths of my soul. I started hearing music all around me at the Starbucks on Astor Place.
To sit in this rehearsal room and hear these songs for the first time, the effect and the impact that it's made on me has just been indelible.
It both holds you like a warm hug, and it also like shakes you to your core.
I really hope that people look at the history of this country and understand that we are still wading in the pool that we've created for ourselves.
Gun and Powder is set in a moment where the country is trying to decide who it will be and what it will be about. And Angelica and Ross have created something so beautiful that allows us to define what this moment is for ourselves as well.
And we are back. If you just joined us, you're now tuned into Diaspora Central Spotlight with Gil Ingles, and our guest today is Angelica Cheri.
Sounds like we're on a French tour whenever you say that.
Yeah, Cheri.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the R, isn't it? It's like, Cheri, Cheri.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, because in Portuguese, the R's sometimes tend to be a little bit heavier.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like, for instance, a Portuguese person can say, o rato roeu a rolha do rei da Rússia. Right.
My goodness. Okay, is that how they speak in Angola?
Angolans speak Portuguese.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're one of the few African countries that do not speak English or French.
That makes sense,
Right.
though, with Brazil.
Yeah, we right across from them.
That makes sense.
We actually share culturally. We share a lot of things.
Wow.
Yeah, most of the population from Brazil
Came from
also
Angola.
has come from Angola.
That makes
Indeed.
sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's interesting, right? Because historically, you have to think the Portuguese actually had the entire portion of southern Africa, and then they lose it, and they end up with Mozambique in the east,
Wow.
Angola in the west,
Wow.
and then Cape Verde in the ocean, already across from Senegal,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then Guinea-Bissau, of course, in the west coast with a few islands in there also.
Wow.
Yeah, and then Brazil, of course, on the other side of the continent, and then in the east also they also have Goa, which is part of India, right?
Wow.
Yeah, so it's they had their influence. I guess they were the navigators, so just not strong enough to keep any of the territories that they would discover according to their discovery narrative.
That part. That's a whole other podcast
Indeed.
we can talk about.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Discover.
Yes, it is. Now, before we went into a break, we were actually talking about the first piece that you write that is part of your thesis that gets a life of its own. Now, as a creative, one of the things that I think I find to be a challenge to many is the fact that unless they see purpose in doing it, they choose not to do it.
Interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
In this bit of conversation that you and I just had, I already noticed one thing, that you don't wait for, oh, that's what they're looking for, that's what I'm going to do. No, you actually you tap into self
Absolutely.
and you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Let's talk
Let's
that.
talk about that. Let's unpack that
Yeah.
because I think that that's a dangerous trap when you're looking for external validation before you period, but before you even create, because then it's like, what is the purpose of your creation? Are you creating to stay on trend? Are you creating for, commercial purposes? That's something that we talk a lot about, especially because I also write in television and film. And when we think about pitching, right, and thinking about trying to sell something in the market, the question is like, well, what do they want? What are they looking for? What's selling right now? And, there are some people, if you have the wrong team, there are managers and agents who will tell you, well, this is, and it's, that's not even, I shouldn't say the wrong team, because it is part of their job to know what is selling in the market or not.
Indeed.
But if they press you to create from that piece, then that's a false sense of creativity. That's just, I'm creating to feed my family, and it's
to accommodate something.
And that's fine. Okay, if that's what you want to do, you can serve someone else's vision. But having your own vision and having something undeniable and original, that's going to be appealing no matter what. And the goal is, for me, is to tell stories that tap into the purpose seed that I'm carrying. And so I really don't care what people, I mean, obviously I want people to participate and appreciate, but that's not in my ear when I'm creating it. When I'm creating, it's what's the story? Is this clear? Is this clear? Is this clear? And for me, if it's clear, there's going to be a population who relates to it.
Indeed.
Because, I'm not waiting for anyone to tell me what to write.
There you go. Now, the challenges of sustainability, right? Because, 7 years in college and then someone coming up and saying, hey, what if we add 2 more? You're now looking at 9 years, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that everyone else is kind of looking like, okay, what are you, a professional student?
Yeah.
Right. But I'm sure that during that time also you were still creating, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you had things going on. But let's talk a little bit and more from a sense of advice to those that probably today face that challenge, right? The sustainability portion of it. Some of the creative ways that you probably had to figure out to make sure that you made ends meet, right? Because, of course, even when there is a fellowship, the fellowship will not cover everything.
That's right.
There are still things that you need to be, and I'm sure that growing up with a grandmother that gave you a lot of good life lessons, you probably learned how to survive in with little.
Sure.
Right? Because she comes from that era.
That's right. That's right.
But let's kind of unpack a bit of that. Talk a little bit about that.
Definitely. I had a side job for many years in school, and it was, I had some of the most random jobs.
Okay.
I worked in the scene shop for some time, so I was like doing scene construction, like with power tools and sawing things off, which it's so unlike my character because I'm like the girliest person.
Yeah. So you actually, so in a scene shop, you're doing things like what, like sets?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I wasn't a master carpenter, but I was, okay, we have to break this down. So take a hammer and knock pieces of wood and, break these things apart and you clean up the sawdust, help set these genies. Like it was very involved. Physically, it was a very physically demanding job. So random.
Yeah.
There was another time where I worked at the Columbia Law School in the AV closet. Like it was the audiovisual department for the law school, and I was like setting up microphones and cords and televisions, and it just things that were completely antithetical to what I was interested in or whatever. But what was important to me is that it didn't take up a lot of brain space, and that it was something that had like a flexible schedule. But it was it paid well, and it was convenient. It just worked.
Exactly.
It worked.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things that we have to do is understand, okay, my priority is the art and having time available to create and nurture the art, be in rehearsal, be creating, writing, things like that. So I did have to sacrifice anything that was going to, I didn't take on a full-time job. I didn't take on something that was going to deter or take energy away from what I was doing in the art.
Right.
And that did mean that the lean years were lean years and longer. And frustrating at times, but again, maintaining my faith and my discipline and learning how to make more out of little and learning how to just be present in the moment and understanding it's just the moment.
Right.
It's not my condition. Because once the finances came in, once the opportunities open, you forget about, you're in it's completely life changing, right? But I think we have to value the time we spend in the wilderness.
Indeed.
Because we learn those survival skills that build our character.
Indeed.
It's not just about ends meeting, it's about where do you find your value? And so that when you get into your season of a promised land, it doesn't consume you and you don't lose your identity in what you have tangibly because you remember who you were and what you made happen with a less.
Indeed. So, I think you just schooled people here you gave them a guide to success.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. You just gave people here a guide to success because I'll be very honest with you. That's the one thing that puzzles many creatives is knowing, okay, what is my priority and what exactly do I need to do? So am I creating because that's what I feel that I need to express or what needs to be expressed is that my God-given duty to show, right?
That's right.
And how can I sustain my lifestyle minimally to be able to create and show, right?
That's right.
And a lot of times, a lot of people think that, okay, the first piece or the first thing you do will automatically make you that big person. And now with Instagram, everybody thinks that.
That's right.
We all are though in our own right? And but it's just that a lot of times we need to understand the positioning.
That's right.
Yeah. Now you mentioned doing workshops and things of that sort. I don't know if you yet aware. Are you aware of the SED Institute Pan-African Library in Houston, Texas?
Not at all.
Okay.
Please.
I'm gonna do this pitch for you, and I hope you're able to make it on this visit.
Yes.
It's actually a Pan-African library, and I think that you should pay that place a visit. And in all honesty, probably leave one of your body of works there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh,
one
I
of
would
your
love to.
books or papers or anything, because it's really a piece of what the diaspora is starting to put together. Because after all, you are not just a playwright; you are an intellectual, right?
Thank you.
You're an intellectual,
Sure.
and we need that power of representation passed on to the community.
Sure.
Because if we don't, if they don't see it, they won't believe it.
That's right.
Right. So
right.
show and tell sometimes is the beginning of big things, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will absolutely check that out.
Indeed,
I will
please.
write this down.
Yeah. We'll definitely make it happen, and I think that Stephanie can definitely assist with that.
Yes,
Yeah,
let's do
she can
that.
assist with that. Now let's go into what you got up and coming. The big, the great things,
Oh
the
my
good things
goodness.
going on. I mean, of course, you got Phenomenal Woman right now here in Houston.
That's right.
Yeah. What else you got going on?
Well, so as I mentioned, we have Gun and Powder that's getting ready for that paper mill production in the spring. Before that, we're going to be doing a workshop in the fall just to tune some things up and get things in order before we go into major rehearsal.
There you go.
I did recently just premiere a movie on Lifetime that
Congratulations.
I wrote. Thank you very much.
That's big time now.
It was a wonderful.
No.
And which is fitting because this story is the biopic of Keisha Cole, the R&B queen.
Oh, wow.
It's called Keisha Cole, This Is My Story.
Mm-hmm.
It literally just came out, so
Boom.
it's like brand new, fresh on there.
There you go.
Very, very excited. Played, starring Keisha Cole herself as herself and Debbie Morgan. But it was a blessing to have written this strong, courageous, phenomenal woman's story. And, it's an interesting, another intersection of storytelling and music, of course.
Right.
So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
Just released that film. Prior to that, I was also a writer on season 3 of Godfather of Harlem.
Okay.
Which is this show on MGM Plus starring Forrest Whitaker about the relationship between Bumpy Johnson, the kingpin in the 60s in Harlem, and his best friend Malcolm X.
Yeah.
So we wrapped season 3 a few months ago. Yeah. And I was also in the middle of writing a musical rom-com for Fox, and it is paused right now because we are on strike. The Guild, and I have to say, in solidarity with the Writers Guild of America, WGA West, we are on hold because we are, again, in the spirit of Maya Angelou, standing up for our rights and for our value and for what rightfully belongs to us. So at this moment, the TV and the film things are paused until further notice. Right. However, things like the Keisha Cole movie and Godfather Harlem, those were already completed before the strike. Right. But just the things in process right now are on pause. Okay. But that does not affect theater whatsoever. Okay. So that's the gift of living in multiple worlds at once, is that when we have a pause over here, we're still busy on this side.
Now, You mentioned being a member of the Guild, of course, and it is something very important. Right. Mention for our audience some of the benefits of being a member of the Guild.
Absolutely. And I didn't realize how rare it was. I mean, it took a while. It was a journey. I had been back in LA for about 5 years, almost 6 years before I was a full member of the Guild. And I was told that the odds of becoming drafted to play Major League Baseball are better than the odds of getting selected to be a member of the Guild. I thought, wow. I didn't realize that. That's quite interesting statistics.
You just taught me something that I didn't know either.
I didn't know that until a few months ago myself.
Wow.
You have a better chance of getting drafted to play Major League Baseball than you do to become a member of the Guild, which is crazy.
Wow.
But the protection of the Guild, it's so vast. One of it, it outlines and sets the minimum of what you should and can be paid for your work. Right. So we have that schedule of minimums that protects us because the work that we do as writers is precious. And we have to be able to set a standard of this is the minimum that you can pay me for writing this type of work, this type of weekly compensation. It outlines all of that. Clearly, and that's an agreement between the studios and the Guild. It also holds our health insurance and a pension plan for retirement. And then it's just this awesome community of different writers and creators whom you are walking through this journey with, who can mentor you, who make you stronger because you do collaborate and television and film. All of these mediums are collaborative mediums. Yeah. But especially like the experience of the writer's room. So it is the community, it's the family, and it is our covering, it's our protection.
Right. Now, those odds, wow.
Crazy.
See, that's why I'm calling you phenomenal woman. It's
goodness.
Like, come on, you've been in the odds of baseball players being picked.
It's so crazy. I was like, what? Baseball?
Yeah.
Major League Baseball.
Indeed. Now, when you're writing for television or for film, and when you're writing for play, is there a major difference in between the two? I'm just now poking curiosity here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Major.
Okay.
So I think some of the things are the same across the board, right? So you're going to have character, dialogue, action, environment. all those things are absolutely the same across the board. You have to have a story that you're telling and characters who you're invested in, a world that has rules and makes sense, and also just, you know, the language of the piece and how the characters speak to each other and how they express their innermost being. Of course, those are skills that are translating across the board. The biggest difference between those mediums is structure. With a play, you normally are going to have a 2-act structure, but you may have a 3-act. You know, it's a little bit more amorphous, but you get to basically create your own structure of storytelling and how the story moves. And of course, you've got Aristotle's Poetics and things that are somewhat expected. You know, you're going to have a midpoint. You know, you're going to have a point of no return, and given circumstances and things of that nature. But for the most part, you can really just play and create and move things as you see fit. In film, you've got the 3-act structure across the board. Every single movie you watch is going to hit these. You have Act 1, which is like the first 20 minutes. You know, you're going to set up the story and the characters. You're going to have a conflict that the main character is resistant to. Then something's going to push them into a point of no return, and then boom, you're in Act 2, which is this long journey of going up and down until you hit the midpoint. Then you go down, down, down. Dark night of the soul. All hope is lost. Everything is terrible. Then Act 3, shortest 10, 15 minutes of the film, we figure out what to do, right? If you kind of just, I mean, that's the spaghetti on the wall version of that. But if you watch any film, you're going to see that structure. In television, you're an episodic structure. So you're going to do, you know, between 3, 4, and 5 acts, depending on if it's a comedy or a drama or whatever it is. And you are hitting those different, you know, setups and point of no return and different developments and climaxes within the episode. But you've also got a season-long arc because your conflict is not resolving in an hour and a half. It's continuously developing over and over and over. So different structural tools. I know it's a long-winded answer, but different structural tools, but the core of it remains the same.
Got you. Now, for the strike that you guys are in, is there anything that the audience can do to help, or what can be done to help that cause?
That is a wonderful question, and I thank you for that. I have somewhat of a controversial answer.
Okay.
I think that to be radically in support of writers, start reading.
Okay. There you go.
Turn off Netflix and
start reading.
Yes, turn off Netflix for a minute, and because with streaming now, it feels a little bit different than strikes in the previous years because we stopped production, but there's all this content that you can still watch. The way to really make a statement is if we're stopping to watch, you know, certain things.
Gotcha.
Of course, I'm like, watch Keisha Cole and then turn off the TV. No, I mean, it's hard, but it is about supporting artists, right? And it's not just writers who are affected by the strike. Everyone else who's involved in production suffers.
Indeed. Yeah, because I mean, it protects the overall art.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And a lot of times there are complicated answers, right?
Very complicated.
And sacrificing sometimes that little bit can probably give the result necessary, because I can see the conflict in your case. I mean, you have a brand new show out there right now with something that is actually telling a story. I did a little bit of research on it, and I noticed one thing that I can already see that that seems to be your vein. You like to tap into mothers, grandmothers, and pass on that into the story being told, because as she's going through that process, I can see that she's almost kind of speaking from her mother's perspective in a way.
Yes.
I could notice that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Indeed.
That was not intentional.
Okay.
But it seems to be, you pull and you attract and you magnetize the things that are within you. Yeah. And that is true. It's always about origin for me. Mm-hmm. What's the origin? What's the why?
It's your DNA.
Yeah, that's right.
It's DNA. So it may even go a whole different direction, but if you pay very good attention, one can see what the DNA is.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, you have the big piece right here, Phenomenal Woman, up in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to know that that vein continues in the diaspora community.
Absolutely.
Because we need that. We need the wise individuals such as yourself. Today, I think one of the greatest things that I believe that this conversation gave us is really the knowledge, and I hope that the creatives who actually find themselves right now in that stuck position, they can kind of understand that, you know what, you don't have to limit yourself to that. You can actually go beyond it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And strive for a lot more.
Push forward.
Indeed. Is there anything that I may not covered in the conversation that we had that you want to share?
Well, one of the things I think it'd be important to know for people coming to see the play, it's about figuring out how you're going to show up in the world. Because Maya had many, and going back to our conversation earlier about being called, saying yes, being chosen, Maya had many opportunities to say no.
Right.
She had many opportunities to back out and say, this isn't worth it. It's not worth the struggle, whatever. I'm going to just retreat into whatever this little corner is of safety that I've built for myself and just exist here because the other thing is just too much. It's too costly. And we will watch, and Maya actually frames the conversation for us to say, this is where you probably are. I don't know where you are on your journey, but you could have been in this place, and you might believe this, you may be feeling that. But let me share my journey with you, and hopefully that will inspire you to press on.
There you go.
And so come just expecting to learn something about this woman who you may, I thought I knew about Maya Angelou,
Right.
and then in the process of researching for this, I realized I knew nothing about her.
Yeah.
And so come to be surprised by what you learn, and then walk away knowing or having a better sense of how you want to show up in the world and what you want to do with your special something.
Indeed.
As a result.
Indeed. And you heard it from someone who is as wise as the wisest individuals that I've had the opportunity to meet.
No, I don't know.
You know, honestly, it's I appreciate you coming in and sharing this bit of time with us. We know that it's a busy season for you because we have of this show here in Houston, right at the one of the historic black theaters in the south portion of the country, right? Which is the Ensemble Theater.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Shout out to Eileen.
yeah. Indeed. Now there's the show is directed by Jackie Alexander.
That's right.
Yeah. Is that the first time you actually work together, collaborate? No.
Jackie produced my first play out of grad school in 2014.
Wow.
So Jackie and I have worked together. He and I have, I think this is the 5th show that we've worked on in some capacity, whether producing or directing.
Yeah.
So this is an almost 10-year collaboration. He's basically my family member now.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah. After 5, I think. After one, you family.
That's right.
Right. After 1, normally you family.
That's
Now,
right.
is he in town also?
He is here. In
Oh,
town.
you gotta send Jackie to come and talk to us
That's
at some
right.
point, right?
He's
So
gotta
that
come.
to see if we can get the entire family here.
Get the whole family.
We're being selfish now.
Yeah. Yes.
No, but we appreciate you stopping by. So, and for those of you,
having me.
Yeah, indeed, thank you. And for those of you that took time out of your schedule to actually listen to this podcast, remember one thing for sure: if we don't support ourselves, no one else will. And at times we have to sacrifice what we want for what we actually need. And ladies and gentlemen, remember, knowing and understanding, that is very, very important. So until next time, remember, do it for self, show up. That's all you need to do. Till next time, peace.